In this episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, I'm going to be discussing practical, real-life takeaways that you can use to help improve and progress your bodyweight and calisthenics training. Hello there, my name is Matt Schifferly. I'm an inventor, author of books like Smart Bodyweight Training, and of course founder of the Red Delta Project, which is your resource for simple and efficient diet and exercise tips that enhance your health and fitness without compromising your quality of life. So the last week I put out a quick little video outlining the question of the day, which was, can you build a pretty impressive muscular physique, kind of like a bodybuilder, with bodyweight training? And I kind of went around it, took a few detours, if you will, because basically the point of the video was that the ability to build a large amount of muscle, it depends on many variables. It's like recovery, sleep, diet, genetics, social, environment. There's a ton of things. And when it boils down to is that exercise is a very important consideration when it comes to if you want to build muscle, of course. However, in the grand scheme of things, the type of training that you use is actually a relatively minor influence. As long as you can basically get a progressive amount of muscular tension flowing through your muscles, that's about the only thing you got to consider. So that's why you're probably never going to build huge muscular legs just running on a treadmill, because the amount of tension in the muscles necessarily isn't that progressive. You can add elevation and sprinting, but you need a method that you can progress the time under tension, and that's both time and the amount of tension. So as long as you've got that, it really doesn't matter what kind of exercise or training you do, what sort of method you're using to bring resistance and bring more attention to the muscles. So it can be progressive calisthenics, it could be using dumbbells or barbells or kettlebells or lifting rocks or rubber bands or Bowflex, or any sort of method can work. As long as you're saying, muscle, I need you to work a little bit harder today than last week or the month before that, then you're covered. Yeah, that's all you really need. However, the question that kept coming up in the comments section was, what would you use as far as a progression method with calisthenics? And I know this is a little bit of a confusion point, because there's two camps that exist when it comes to the belief of progression with calisthenics. Camp number one is that it's extremely limited and you can't do much with it. And this is usually from folks who don't really understand the nature of progressive calisthenics to a large degree. And then there's two from the folks who do understand that, but they're like, there are so many variables and there are so many different ways you can do this. There's so many things you can change. How would you ever go about laying out a progressive system? And hell, I'm one who's adding to the confusion with my table of progressive elements when I'm like, guys, look at this. 9 variables, 9 things you can progress to enhance and build bigger, stronger muscles using bodyweight training. But after sitting back on this for the past several days, I started to realize much of this confusion and the differences we see between progression with weights and progression with calisthenics and stuff is actually a mythical or misunderstanding of how we can adequately progress our training in general with our exercises, regardless of the method. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that a lot of us are approaching advancement and progression in exercise backwards, the wrong way. So let me put some context to this perspective for you. When usually we talk about progressive calisthenics versus weightlifting, one of the biggest ideas that keeps popping up is people say, well, it's easier and more simple to progress with weightlifting because all you do is you add weight. You just simply put more weight on the bar, and there you go. And there are even strength coaches I've heard out there say, all you've got to do to make progress is just put more weight on the bar or pick up something heavier, and that's all there is to it. But over the years, I've realized that this is an incredibly short-sighted way of looking at it, especially when you get more advanced. That strategy may work a little bit for a beginner being anybody who's making those initial gains, could be even 2 or 3 years in, but it's still a beginner's mindset. But the more you get advanced, the less it's going to return as some sort of a result. Now, in calisthenics, a lot of times it gets thrown into, well, to progress, just do more reps. And it's the exact same short-sighted approach where you can only do this so long. You can't just keep adding repetitions just as you can't just keep adding weight. Years ago, I was talking with an individual at the gym, and we were discussing plans, and I was like, what's your progression strategy? And he's like, well, just add more weight. And it kind of sounded like, yeah, that makes sense. But after we had parted ways, and I was like, man, he's not going to make it. And I made a mental note to talk to him next time, but sure enough, I never saw him again. It's like, no, that's the worst strategy you could possibly have. And here's why. Is because when we are trying to progress our workouts through expansion, this is a very finite and very limited way to go about it. Because adding reps, adding sets, adding weight is actually not the thing that makes you progress. Adding resistance, rather, is not what makes you bigger and stronger. It is the result of getting bigger and stronger. We're putting the cart before the horse. And this goes for both calisthenics training and weightlifting. But the reason why I've learned this through calisthenics training is because calisthenics training requires this versus a lot of times, like when I was lifting weights, I was wholly ignorant of this. The real source, if you will, of progression in all forms of training is your technical proficiency. That is the source of your training. It's what makes you bigger, it's what makes you stronger, it's what makes you faster. Whatever you want, that's the thing that's going to get it. And of course, with calisthenics training, we have this thing called technical integration, as I like to call it, where if you want to get better, you have to improve your technique. Versus with weights, it can easily go the other way, where it says just add more weight to the bar, and people will sacrifice technique as a way to get more reps or get more weight. Of course, it can happen with body weight training as well. So here's the perspective that I want to share with you in today's podcast is your progression comes from how well you train. And when you get better at it, then you can add reps. Then you can add weight if you're lifting weights. Then you can go to a higher step in convict conditioning and do a more advanced exercise. But when we're thinking to ourselves, I get stronger because I do an advanced step, or because I do more reps, or because I expand by adding weight, I'm building on top of my workout, I'm adding to it. That's not the way you progress. In fact, it's actually a very fast way to regress because your foundation isn't built. You often use the analogy of building up, well, anything in the world that needs to be built up requires a stronger foundation. If you just take a pile of sand and you start pouring it out, in order for the sand pile to get bigger, the base needs to get broader in order to get higher. It's the same thing. You want a taller building, you need a stronger foundation. That's the way that we have to interact with gravity. Your progression's the same thing. You can't just keep adding up without a stronger foundation, or you'll either stop going up, which is why a lot of people plateau, or you'll crash and collapse with things like injury and burnout and so on. So we build adding on as a result of the progression. It's not the thing that causes the progression in and of itself. And with bodyweight training, there's a number of ways you can do this. First off is to add, or improve rather, not so much add, but improve the technical integrity of your repetitions throughout a set. A couple of ways you can do this. Look at the table of elements that I refer to in my book. Biggest one that often goes short-sighted is the range of tension. Range of motion with tension in the muscles. Lots of times when people are starting to do reps, the range starts to decrease as they get tired. Another thing that starts to change around is the position in space. So if you're doing something like archer push-ups, for example, you've got most of your weight on one arm, and you start to get tired, you start to shift more of your weight onto your supporting arm. So your technique is eroding. And then, of course, you also have other positions in space. Things like when you're doing pull-ups and you start kicking with your legs. Or if you're doing squats, let's say pistol squats, and the first few you're doing very strong and solid, but after a few repetitions, you start lurching forward, you start reaching really forward to get out of that bottom position. These are all aspects of what I call technical erosion. Your technique is starting to erode. So, how do you progress? Period. Not just calisthenics, but weights and everything else. How do you progress? You progress through improving your technical proficiency. Do better reps. Because I'm telling you, you won't be able to lift more weight. You won't be able to advance in steps and convict conditioning. You will not be able to do more repetitions until the reps you're currently doing get better. Then, and only then, will you be able to make progress. And there's a million ways you can look at this. When it comes to technique, it's like, well, how do I know what to work on? Here's the really simple way to know. This is very, very simple. It applies to everything. Is take note of how your technique erodes over time. So let's say you do 10 repetitions of any exercise. Now, chances are very good your 10th rep isn't going to be like your first rep when you're fresh. Your mission is to figure out what's different. Is your range of tension getting shorter? Is your position shifting? Is your technique eroding in some way? What is changing? And if you can't tell if anything's changing, have someone like videotape you or film you with a smartphone. And you can observe a lot through watching, says Yogi Berra. You'll notice a lot. Little things, little tiny details. That's the thing you need to progress. Whatever is eroding from one repetition to the next, that's the thing you need to improve upon. And it's going to be specific to what you want, because that's the other thing about progression, is everybody's different. This is why people hire coaches. If you had 5 people in front of me and each of them said they wanted to get stronger in push-ups, every single one of them may need to improve something different about their push-up to get stronger, depending on where their strengths and weaknesses are. But this is a foolproof way for you to custom know what you need personally. What is different towards the end of your set? Then improve that. And once you improve that, I promise you, you'll be able to move to more reps. You'll be able to move to a heavier level of resistance, be it with weight or technical advancement, whatever the case may be. Then you can expand your workout. But you won't be able to expand it until you build up that foundation and improve the technical proficiency, which, especially as you get more advanced, how you will progress most of your workouts. So hopefully that gives you something to think about as far as your overall progression and ability to improve your bodyweight training. If you're listening to this on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new here, leave your comments and questions in the RDP community down below in the comments section. And as always, really appreciate you guys listening to me. I know I don't take it for granted. You're spending time, you're spending your attention, listening to me talk. I'm here for you. I'm here to improve your health and fitness habits and your calisthenics journey. So hit me up with questions, reddeltaproject@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for listening. Talk to you guys next week. Till then, be fit, live free.